Welcome to the Brick by Brick podcast with Ronald Pauleus. We have a special guest returning this week, Bridgette Ruiz. She was with us last week, just a wealth of knowledge, a great coach, great person. I got her on again to kind of dive into some of the topics she mentioned. She talked a lot about private money, lending. She has been a private money lender. She's had a horrible experience and she's working through that. But from that experience, she's really built an onboarding program, a white glove service where the private money lenders she works with, they do not get the same experience she had when she was first a PML. And so, Bridgette, thanks for joining us again. You gave some of your story and introduction last time. Let's just dive right into it this time. You mentioned
Love it.
in our last episode that you're a capital raiser. You're raising private money. You're wanting to give people double digit returns. I'm just starting in the real estate sphere. And I know my question would be this: how much do I need to be a private money lender?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And those that actually are raising capital, it can range. It can range anywhere
Mm-hmm.
from $30,000, right? Depending upon the project. It could be $50,000. And these funds don't necessarily, I know many of us might be thinking, oh, this is like, I don't have that kind of money sitting around in my bank account. How do I actually get funds,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because you're thinking this isn't feasible. This is nothing in my life or in my sphere right now that I could lean
Mm-hmm.
into. But we actually do have other means of using capital. And so for those of us, and myself included, this is actually something I've done as well, is to use old retirement accounts. And so what I mean by
Mm.
old retirement
Okay.
accounts is that you have
Yeah.
money. You could have, $50,000 from, say, an employer that you were saving your 401k, which those are for-profit organizations, or if you work for, say, a nonprofit, you may have a 403b. Um,
Okay.
and there's other, you know, titles of these ways for us to save, or even IRAs, right? Many of us are probably
Yeah.
familiar
Yeah.
with IRAs. Um, those are places that we can use money to help with these private money lending opportunities. And so, having what is called a self-directed IRA, which is basically that old 401k money that's
Mm-hmm.
sitting around and is just idle. Um, it's not working for you. It's not going to make those double digit returns, right?
Yeah.
Um, you can really put those to work. And that's where I help my private money lenders, um, either one kind of get a hold of that. So you could have, like I said,
Okay.
30,000, you could have 50,000, you might have, 150,000 that you're lending. So that range, and you don't have to put it all into one particular opportunity. You could
Okay.
actually have, say you have $100,000, you could do $50,000 with one project. Again, you're going to vet that and make sure makes sense. And you can do it, say, a second one at another 50,000 and invest 100,000, for example. Uh,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
so, the dollar amount may range, depending upon, what the needs are for those funds, but double digit returns to those that are investing, right? Especially for us. I'm not speaking for all projects and opportunities out there,
Mm-hmm.
definitely, with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. That's valuable because I think sometimes people may think every real estate investor is giving double digit returns, and that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
The people that I know that will partner with me definitely double digit returns and definitely with you. So that's awesome you gave that distinguishing factor there in our community.
Yes. And I have a really funny, quick story on this one.
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
is what I mean for those that, one, if you're just thinking about making your money work for you. Two is for somebody who's actually in this space who's thinking, is this maybe my avatar? Is this something that I could be doing in real estate? And I will tell you this really quick, cute story. So I'm at a 5-year-old's birthday party, right? And social media is super powerful.
Yeah.
This is how powerful it is. And I never even knew this. This was the very first time I ever saw this happen. I'm at this, 5-year-old's birthday party, and in the corner of my eye, I see my brother-in-law come darting over to me, and I'm in conversation with somebody else. And as soon as I wrap up the conversation, he says, and I've never talked to him about real estate investing. He comes to me and he says, could you get me more than 7% on $100,000?
Wow.
I had never talked to him about
Wow.
raising capital. Never. But yet I was posting things on my social media about real estate. And I was just surprised.
Wow.
That I've never, again, you don't know how, what's going on in other people's lives, or that they're even lending, right?
Yeah.
And it just lands on your lap sometimes. So, that's the power of social media, that you can actually have these opportunities just come to you. And to your point, as we were sharing a moment ago, 7%, right? Somebody could be making 7%. Those coming to us,
Wow.
we're making double digits. So that's definitely how it can happen too. These little,
Moments.
random moments. You just never know. You never know.
I think what really stands out to me is his sincere question. Can you get me more than 7%? I have a money market account that I've had for just a little while, and I think the return is 3 to 4, something around that, and it's way better than my savings account. But after joining Sub 2 and seeing the real estate sphere and how we can really help people who may not be at a place where they're going to dive all into real estate, but they have funds that they want to get better returns on. And when we say double digits, it almost sounds like a scam.
Yeah.
Like the stock markets, the stock market has gone down the past few weeks and it's leveling out and whatnot, but it's more than 7%. It's like, wait, double digits? That's unbelievable. But yet it's possible. It's possible. You mentioned older retirement accounts. How can we get a hold of those funds? Like if I have a Roth IRA, a traditional, a 401k, like how?
I love that. Yeah. And again, all of these things I've experienced, right? That's what I love about how I show up, is that I had, my husband has had his employer for 30 something years. I, however, have had a lot of other employers, right? So I've gone to a company, I'll stay for a few years, and I've moved on to another. And what is very common, and we get so busy, our lives are so busy, you have these accounts. And so you may have worked for an employer for 5 years or
I see.
years.
Yeah.
And what happens is these plans, they want to keep that money in their plans. They don't want that money to get out.
Yeah.
So you go on to a new employer, you get your life, busy with your new job, and that money is still sitting there. So you might have a few of these kind of accounts sitting around, and
I see.
they just kind of sit out there and then nothing happens. What happens is, typically if you have a low balance, they'll do what is called a forced distribution, which is very rare. They don't want to do a forced distribution. I know this in my HR world, right? That hat is on right now. If you don't have, usually it's like $1,000. It's not much. They don't want to push out that money to you. One, you get taxed highly taxed when those funds go out. But the second point is they don't want to release those funds. They'll let it sit there. And now you've got, say you've had 2 or 3 employers that you've, moved on from, and those accounts are just sitting there. And they'll gladly let that money sit. But we can actually go back to those funds. Those funds belong to you, but they're sitting in kind of a bubble of your retirement. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so those funds uh, will always go towards your retirement. And if you go outside and pull those monies out, those then become taxable income, and it gets to, you're losing out
Mm-hmm.
on all that benefit of
Yeah,
having those
yeah.
retirement funds. So yeah, so you go through and ultimately you're looking to kind of round up all of those accounts,
Okay.
and you can put them in. And that's where my guidance when I'm working with my PMLs are to, help them get to that place, where you're able to have those retirement funds, which again, you kind of have to keep those funds are going to stay protected in that retirement shelter.
Mm-hmm.
But those funds can then be used in what is called a self-directed IRA. So,
Okay. Okay.
and you've got two different types of funds, right? You've got just your traditional, which means that those funds were taken pre-taxed. So there's not
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
taxation right now. And then there's Roth. And those Roth dollars are treated differently because you actually have taken the tax today at whatever tax rate you've got. And then
Mm-hmm.
at retirement, you're not going to pay any of those taxes on the distribution end of your retirement. Whereas traditional, you're going to get taxed when those dollars are coming out. So
Gotcha.
you've got your
Gotcha.
traditional and you've got your Roth, and you're able to use those funds in what's called a self-directed IRA. And so those custodians, that's what those companies are. They're, that's the role they play.
Managing your money.
Yeah, the custodian is managing that. And there is definitely that feeling, because I know this when I've just, distributed my funds, they're making sure that things are in place, that you're sending the
Mm-hmm.
funds to the right place. There's
Mm-hmm. That's
deed of
good.
trust, right? There's
Yep. Yep. That's good.
mortgage, securities agreement. Those things are there. They're required. So
That's
if
good.
there's any kind of self-doubt of like, oh my gosh, am I getting scammed? These self-directed custodian accounts are truly going to make sure that these things,
That's good.
paperwork is there. And so that's where my assistance comes in as well, right? Is to ensure that those documents are prepared, and that all of those I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of that process, and you have access to those funds. Now, you had mentioned like, oh, can I spend it? You can't go off and run with that money and go spend. It's going to sit there for your retirement. But think about this, is that we know, and I just saw this research the other day, that the growing population of those 65 and older, that's the population that is growing in the workforce, which tells
Huh.
us, which is telling us we're
Yeah.
working, which, maybe
Wow.
it's a choice. I was just talking to my business partner about this. He's like, I'm going to work until the last day, right? I'm like, I get that. I get that. I could enjoy and see that being how somebody wants to spend their time, right? They enjoy working.
Yeah.
But what we know, and we definitely see this, is that age group is growing, and that
Wow.
it's not the younger folks entering the workforce,
Yeah.
actually the older workforce that is sticking around
Wow.
long.
Yeah.
So that population is growing.
They don't have enough for retirement.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
You're gonna be potentially working
Mm,
later years of your life. If that's what you choose, that's great. But what we know and the data is saying is that that population is growing, of those working into their 65 and older.
wow. Wow. You mentioned about well, let me highlight this. I think I didn't realize that the custodian also on the self-directed IRA side is making sure all of those documents are legit and good. It's I think it's valuable that several eyes are on it. You got the escrow agent, they're making sure all the documents are ready. The transaction coordinator is making sure all the documents are good and ready and proper. The you yourself, you're making sure the private or Bridgette yourself, you're making sure the custodian, and then the person lending the dollar. That's five sets of eyes making sure. Oh, that's awesome. That's just awesome. Thanks for that.
So maybe you're welcome. And maybe that brings a little bit more ease, knowing
Mm,
that there are these, that there are many eyes on it versus like, am I just giving somebody,
yeah.
and this is what, no, there
Yeah.
is, if you're using these funds, that is definitely
Oh,
going
that's
to,
awesome.
have these layers that are there and these people that are looking at the documents and making sure that you know you're
Hmm.
you're putting these monies for your retirement. And again, you're going to use it for retirement. So if you're not quite at retirement age yet, and that number can move as we have seen. That age
Mm-hmm.
can adjust, and who knows in the future what that looks like as we continue to save for retirement. That number can climb up as well. That retirement age.
Yeah. Let's, you mentioned payments and whatnot. I
Mhm.
have a couple questions here on that. Let's say I'm wanting to be a private money lender. I have 10,000, 15, 30, 40, whatever it is,
Mhm.
and it's just sitting in my savings or a money market account.
Mhm.
I lend it out to you. How am I receiving that back? What does that look like? Is it like a regular mortgage or it's 30 years with it? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So when you're lending your funds, right? And depending upon that amount, and we'll just give an example. For example, let's say it's you're lending $50,000. There's there's also a duration of time that's agreed, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're going to say, yes, I will lend you $50,000 for, say, 12 months. That's pretty standard, right? You might go a year, for example. And at $50,000, 12 months, the annualized return at 1% or 12%, I should say 12% annualized, is that you would be getting $500 every month in interest only. That's just the interest
Okay.
on that $50,000, for
Okay.
example, right? And so one of two things can be arranged. Either it's monthly, where the interest is received monthly. Um, Standard process could be at the end of the year, where you just get, your full investment, that you initial capital that you brought, along with that interest. It depends. I've seen
Mm,
individuals say, you know what, let's just do it at the 1 year. Like I myself, that's what I do. I'm okay with it. Just at the end of the year, my interest is paid
mm-hmm.
out then. Somebody may want it every month, which is fine, especially if it's cash, right? They want, say, 500 extra
Yeah.
coming in, right? You're like, hey, yeah, I'll get you your, at the end of that year, you'll get what invested, but you're also going to have those interest payments um, that are, that's just happening every month. So that's
So,
a bit about that interest.
okay, so you mentioned interest only payments. Use continuing with that $500 example from the 50,000. Is that 500 that totals up to 6,000 for the year? Is that coming out of the 50? So when I get when we get to the end, am I getting back 40, what, two, no, 44,000? Or am I, what's happening there?
Yeah, no, you're getting, great question. At the end of the year, you're getting your $50,000 back plus
Oh,
$6,000, right? Because you're getting that 500 every month. So you're actually going to have 56,000 at the end of that
uh,
year. And with me and my particular business, um, it's also community, like the community is also going to benefit as well. So not only is your returns, right, going to be a positive
yeah,
experience, but then the community is also having, the positive, you're making an impact in the community and you know, having some impact to investing. It's such a
yeah.
powerful tool.
So I'm trying to think of my listeners,
Yeah.
and they're probably thinking several things are probably going through their mind. One, $6,000 on a return of 6,000, lending after lending 50 is they're getting they'll get way more than with the money market account over a year. One, which almost sounds unbelievable. Like I said, I had a money market account that was 3 or 4%. So you giving 12% is three times that, which
Mhm.
is like wow. And then two, those interest only payments, are they free to do? Now this is not out of their retirement account because you clearly made it clear that when they use money from a self-directed IRA, it goes back to that IRA and they can't use it until they're retired and all that. Now, when it's their own money that's not from an IRA,
Mhm.
that $500 interest only payment, what are they allowed to do with it?
Yeah, that's their money, right? You're
Mm.
you're free to use if you were using and even there's other ways. It's not even just cash. If you
Okay.
have what's called the term the just kind of terminology HELOC, which is it's a
Ah,
right? Let's say you
yeah.
have a house and you have access to equity in your house.
I didn't even think about
Another
that.
way
Yeah.
to tap into money is you may have what's called a HELOC, and a HELOC is a home equity line of credit, right? And so those those available monies could also be used to invest. And depending upon your interest that you might be paying on that HELOC, it might make sense that you could use that money
Mm.
to do these investments, right? And to partner and be able to have returns even on money that's sitting there from your own equity in your house. So you could use cash, you
Wow.
could use a HELOC. There's people who use credit cards. There's a
Yeah.
whole lot of different ways, right? Like you can use a lot of different funds to make money, right? Like make your money work hard for you, right? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
you working really hard for that dollar, let your money work hard, right? And it's doing it for you. And let us
Yeah.
do the work while we're renovating
Yeah.
these homes, right? For people to be able to have their journey and their sober journey to so so and doing and living with other people. I mean, it's so powerful what what can be done.
Hmm. For sure. For sure. I think sometimes people don't realize the benefit us real estate investors bring to the table, bring to the community.
Hmm.
Think about the one house that's on your block or in your neighborhood that you pass by every single time. It's boarded up, the windows are broken, homeless people are constantly breaking in and out, drugs are no doubt happening in there. Like, think about if a real estate investor came in, raised the funds they needed, renovated the place after they purchased it, and a family of five moves in, family of six, or some college kids who need a place to stay. I think sometimes people just don't realize the value we bring, that we can bring to raise the standard of living in a community
Yeah.
and to make that difference. And so, Bridget, thank you for joining again. Thanks for sharing. If I was someone who had funds, needed, or like your brother, can you get me more than 7%? Your brother-in-law. If that's me, how do I get a hold of you? How fast is the process? Do you have a project lined up that you're like, hey, we can get it working today? What does
I've
that look like?
I've loved that. Yes. So my business partner and I, we are moving. We are constantly,
Mm-hmm.
constantly getting on to the next, right? So
Awesome.
by the way, the market I'm in is in North Carolina. And so
Okay. Okay.
Greensboro, for example, right? And you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about those neighborhoods. Oh my gosh, it is so true. The house that we have
Mm.
in Greensboro, for example, that property is in a good area, right? But if you go a little bit further out, or you may end up in an area that's a little rough, and it can,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
investors though can help make that change, right? Can kind of
Mm-hmm.
influence, like moving some of this stuff out of those communities. And so, like, for example, we've got that property. We've got another one in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so this will always be the case. We're going to continue to, have a positive impact to the community, and we will have these projects. So yeah, without a doubt, if there is any question about, well, where's this money going to go? We definitely
Yeah.
projects we have
Yeah.
that we're renovating and we're working on. So yeah, definitely can rest assured, you can find that I will be able to make those dollars go to work, and that you would be getting those double digit returns. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Bridget, for joining us. Share your social, your
Yeah.
Instagram, and how we can get a hold of you, and let's let's help some people get some double digit returns.
Yeah, I love it. So on Instagram, you can find me with my last name, Ruiz, Ruiz underscore, and then my first name, Bridgette, Bridgette. And then LinkedIn as well is a great place to find me. And that one's just with Bridgette Ruiz. So would love to help in any way, and help you get those double digit returns.
Awesome. Thank you, Bridget, for joining us and helping our listeners brick by brick build the future they are wanting and taking their future into their own hands. Y'all have a good week. Bye bye.
Bye.